When the lights hit the stage at the 2025 Mr. Olympia, every eye in the arena turned to one name: Nick Walker. Known as the Mutant, he walked in with the confidence of a true champion. On social media, he'd been saying for weeks that he was in the best shape of his life, ready to claim the one title still missing from his resume. The hype was real, and the fans believed it. After all, following his impressive showdown with Derek Lunsford the year before, plenty of people had their money on Nick. But the moment he stepped on stage, something felt off. The physique that was supposed to dominate looked heavy, a bit off balance, missing the sharpness and flow he showed at the Pittsburgh Pro. Disappointment spread fast. The result? Shocking. He didn't even make the top 5. It was a brutal drop for someone who, not long ago, was seen as Lunsford's biggest threat. Within minutes, the internet exploded with comments, theories, and heated debates. How did this happen? Fans and experts asked. Could a guy as disciplined and intense as Nick Walker really miss his peak at a show this big? For many, it seemed impossible. Others began to wonder if the problem wasn't his body, but his strategy, and the mystery only deepened as photos and stage footage spread online. Nick, who's always been a polarizing figure in bodybuilding, suddenly had his reputation on the line. Some fans rushed to defend him, pointing out his meteoric rise and the insane shape he showed just months earlier. Others were harsher, saying the Mutant had gotten too focused on size and forgotten about aesthetics. Either way, everyone agreed on one thing. His 2025 performance left a lot of questions unanswered. Before we dive deeper, hit that like button and drop a comment. Do you think Nick Walker's placing at the 2025 Mr. Olympia was fair? Did he really fall behind the others? Or did the judges go too hard on him? Let's break it all down and find out what really happened to the most talked about mutant in modern bodybuilding. Right after the surprising results, fans wanted answers. Who was responsible for Nick Walker's downfall? The silence didn't last long. His new coach, Kyle Wilkes, came forward and took full responsibility. In a candid video, he explained that the mistake happened during the most critical phase of prep, the peak week timing, the exact moment when an athlete's body should hit maximum fullness, definition, and density. Unfortunately, Nick's peak came too late. According to Kyle, Nick actually looked his best on Saturday, when it didn't matter anymore. At Mr. Olympia, the most important scoring happens during Friday prejudging, the first round of comparisons. That's where the Mutant's fate was sealed. He walked on stage looking a bit flat, meaning the muscles lacked fullness, and missed the first call-out. And in pro bodybuilding, once you drop in the prejudging, it's almost impossible to climb back up. That explanation made sense to many. Prepping an elite athlete is like a science experiment. It involves precise control of water, carbs, and sodium, timed down to the minute. One small miscalculation can ruin months of work. And that's exactly what seemed to happen. A tiny adjustment error that cost him the title. The coach owned up to it and praised Nick's professionalism, saying that even though he was frustrated, he stayed disciplined and trusted the process until the end. Kyle made it clear, Nick followed every instruction to the letter. There was no recklessness, no shortcuts. He fully believed in his new coach's plan, which only added weight to Wilkes' mistake. For a first-time Olympia coach, that's a tough lesson to carry. I won't make the same mistake twice, he said, ending his statement with a tone of humility and reflection. The bodybuilding community split in two. Some admired the honesty and accountability from both Nick and his coach. Others saw the incident as a warning. Why change your prep team right before the biggest show in the world? It's a risky move, especially when your career's at its peak. That question kept echoing through forums and podcasts for weeks. But the damage was done. Nick's faith in the new method was admirable, but the stage doesn't forgive. In professional bodybuilding, success lives in the details, and sometimes it's those tiny details that bring down a giant. In Nick Walker's case, many experts pointed out that the mistake was more technical and physiological than strategic. One of the most debated issues was his decision not to manipulate sodium during prep. To people who know the sport, that sounded almost crazy. Sodium plays a crucial role in balancing muscle volume and definition. And changing, or not changing, it can completely alter how an athlete looks on stage. By keeping sodium intake constant, Nick ended up stepping on stage flat, with muscles that looked dry but lacked that full, dense, 3D look that wows the judges. proper manipulation of water and sodium is what allows a bodybuilder to shed water retention while keeping the muscles full and vascular. Without that, the physique loses the signature pump that defines a perfect peak. Another hot topic was Nick's heavy reliance on new compounds and experimental drug protocols. Nick and his team decided to bet on a modern lineup of peptides and cutting-edge performance enhancers, the kind of stuff that promises quick results but still divides opinions among coaches. Believing that these new formulas could replace old-school methods might have been the biggest mistake. In bodybuilding, innovation is exciting, but it's also dangerous, because when the chemistry fails, the physique falls apart. Even Nick's coach admitted that some of the protocols were still being tested and that the mix might not have reacted as expected. Small hormonal or metabolic imbalances can completely change how the body responds during the final days of prep. What should have been the finishing touch turned into a chemical disaster. Nick, trusting the process, paid the price for being one of the first to try an approach that wasn't fully proven yet. These technical errors show just how unstable elite-level bodybuilding really is. A single extra milligram, one wrong meal, or a compound of questionable purity can ruin months of preparation. And what's most surprising is that Nick, despite his experience, fell right into the trap of over-experimentation. When fans started comparing photos of Nick Walker from the Pittsburgh Pro to those from Mr. Olympia 2025, the difference was obvious. In Pittsburgh, he looked at his peak, balanced, dense, and with shockingly improved aesthetics. His physique showed harmony, size, and crisp definition in perfect proportion. That was the Nick who fired up crowds and intimidated rivals. Many believed that version of him could finally dethrone Derek Lunsford. But when Olympia weekend came, the story changed. Nick appeared noticeably bigger, around 9 pounds, about 4 kilograms, heavier than before, but he'd lost flow and proportion. His waist looked thicker, his upper body overpowered his frame, and his legs, once the stabilizing feature of his physique, looked smaller compared to the added mass up top. The result was a heavier, rougher look, but without the refinement needed to impress the judges. The size showed up, but the symmetry didn't. That imbalance became crystal clear once he started posing. In Pittsburgh, every transition felt smooth, his abs tight, his muscles reacting perfectly to every flex. On the Olympia stage, he tried to compensate by adjusting his stances, but that only made the physique look more uneven. His midsection appeared tense, and the control over his core, once one of his strongest assets, seemed to have deteriorated. The audience noticed instantly. The Nick from Olympia wasn't the same Nick they'd seen just months earlier. Side-by-side analyses from experts were unanimous. The Pittsburgh version of Nick Walker could have gone head-to-head with Lunsford for the Sando. If he'd maintained that form, he'd have been right in the mix for the title. But packing on mass in the wrong places wrecked the silhouette that made him competitive. Bigger arms, thicker back, but less overall balance. In a sport where aesthetics and proportion are everything, excess became the enemy. That contrast turned into a powerful lesson, not just for Nick, but for the entire bodybuilding community. Fans love progress, but not at the expense of shape and symmetry. Raw size might blow up on social media, but on the Olympia stage, it's balance that wins. Nick tried to level up in size, but ended up losing ground in aesthetics, and it cost him big time. Among all the commentary on Nick Walker's 2025 Olympia showing, one topic stole the spotlight: the dreaded bubble gut. When he stepped on stage, many noticed something off. His abdomen looked distended, pushed forward, even though the rest of his physique was razor dry. The sight clashed with his otherwise insane definition. The bubble gut isn't just an aesthetic flaw, it's a warning sign that the body is being pushed beyond its limits. This abdominal distension happens when internal organs start pressing outward against the abdominal wall. And here's the crazy part: it shows up in athletes with less than 5% body fat. So the issue isn't fat, it's internal growth, caused by hormonal manipulation, extreme dieting, and digestive overload. Among the most cited causes, the first is the chronic use of high-dose growth hormone, GH. When used long-term, GH can enlarge internal organs, especially the liver and intestines. When combined with insulin, that effect multiplies, creating the infamous muscle gut. It's the price many athletes pay to achieve the extreme size demanded in the open division. a steep price that often sacrifices harmony and aesthetics. But it's not just chemistry. The monstrous diet required to maintain a 285-pound, 130 kilograms, physique at 3% body fat plays a major role too. We're talking 7,000 to 10,000 calories a day, split into massive meals that stretch the gastrointestinal tract over time. The human body simply isn't designed to digest that much food constantly. That overload naturally expands the abdomen, and eventually, even the best athletes in the world start showing it. The bubble gut is the face of a new bodybuilding era, one where size trumps shape. Bodybuilding today isn't what it was in the 90s. Back then, champions were defined by aesthetics, proportion, and tight waists. Athletes looked like living sculptures, clean lines, graceful flow, visual harmony. But over time, the sport began rewarding something else: shock value, mass, and the kind of physique that makes the crowd's jaw drop. And that's how we entered the modern era, this size at all costs era. Nick Walker might be the clearest symbol of that generation. His nickname, the Mutant, says it all: a body that defies human limits. Massive arms, a dense upper body, and stage presence that intimidates everyone around him. For many fans, he embodies the true freak spirit of modern bodybuilding. But that relentless pursuit of maximum size comes with a heavy price. As the body grows, symmetry and aesthetics fade, and what was once art starts looking like excess. Technically, the sport has evolved, but visually, it's regressed. The fans who once idolized the balanced physiques of Frank Zane, Lee Labrada, or Sean Ray now see stages filled with giants sporting thick waists and protruding stomachs. The bubble gut, once a rarity, has almost become standard among open competitors. Behind the lights, trophies, and applause lies a harsh reality few want to face. Professional bodybuilding, especially in the open class, is an extremely high-risk sport. The heavy, continuous use of GH, insulin, and anabolic steroids doesn't just enlarge muscles, it also enlarges internal organs. And when the body starts growing from the inside out, the side effects stop being cosmetic and start being life-threatening. Cases like Dallas McCarver and Rich Piana shook the bodybuilding world. Two adored athletes, symbols of human potential, who died young from complications linked to long-term substance use. Their hearts were literally enlarged, the result of years of hormonal abuse and extreme physical stress. Of all the lessons Nick Walker's 2025 Olympia experience left behind, maybe the most important one is about nutrition and mindset. For years, the belief was that the stricter the diet, the better the results. But reality proves that's not always true. Eating absurd amounts of chicken, rice, and sweet potatoes can be just as harmful as eating junk food, especially when your stomach is forced to process huge quantities of food every single day. The outcome: abdominal distension, discomfort, and a loss of aesthetic flow. Modern bodybuilding demands metabolic intelligence, not just willpower. Former Mr. Olympia Jay Cutler is a great example. In interviews, he's admitted that during certain prep phases, he included soda, candy, and even fast food to hit his calorie targets without overloading his digestive system. The logic is simple. Your body doesn't care about clean or dirty food labels. It recognizes nutrients, energy, and balance. Extreme rigidity often becomes the enemy of performance. The problem is, many athletes and fans still confuse suffering with discipline. They think the harder and cleaner the process, the more glorious the result. But bodybuilding is science, not punishment. Suffering doesn't guarantee success. In fact, blindly following a hardcore diet can cause fatigue, bloating, and even ruin your final look. Exactly what we saw with Nick at the 2025 Olympia. The real secret that separates the good from the legendary is the balance between discipline and flexibility. Your body needs strategy, not stubbornness. Eating well isn't about eating as much as possible. It's about eating what your body actually needs, in the most efficient way. One smartly designed shake can be worth more than 3 giant plates of rice and chicken. The difference lies in knowledge, and that's why the true champions learn to listen to their bodies, not just follow rigid formulas. That mindset applies offstage too. Fans who follow bodybuilding can take something valuable from this story. Balance is power. Success, in any field, comes from knowing when to push forward and when to pull back. And that's the wisdom Nick Walker is still developing, step by step, mistake by mistake, as he works toward the ultimate version of himself. The mutant the world is still waiting to see. Even after a rough season, Nick Walker remains one of the most respected names in global bodybuilding. His dedication is undeniable, his work ethic relentless, and his passion for the sport continues to inspire thousands. The 2025 Olympia was a stumble, but not the end of the road. He still has what it takes to come back stronger. All he needs is to refine his focus, sharpen his strategy, and remember that the basics, done right, still beat the experimental. Experts agree, we haven't seen the best Nick Walker yet. When he finally manages to balance size and aesthetics, science and instinct, discipline and patience, that's when the mutant will be ready to lift the Mr. Olympia trophy. The 2025 mistake served as a wake-up call, a reminder that even giants are human, and that overconfidence can be just as dangerous as lack of preparation. But above all, Nick's story is one of resilience. He proved it's possible to fail in front of the whole world and still hold your head high, ready to start again. And that lesson goes far beyond bodybuilding. It's about life, discipline, and humility. Maybe that's why so many people still root for him, believing that next time, things will be different. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe Nick Walker can still become Mr. Olympia? Drop your thoughts down below. I read every comment. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, turn on notifications, and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. If you'd like to support the channel even more, consider becoming a member. And don't go anywhere. Another video you'll definitely enjoy is coming up on your screen right now.